All right, you checking in with Mike Williams from the LA Chargers, and you're tuning in to Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. If this is your first time tuning in to the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Dan Wolkenstein, it is good to be talking to you, sir. We're almost to July. Again, this is as much as we talk about waiting for training camp and waiting for preseason, you just had the NBA Finals and we just had the NBA Draft over the past 2 days. The Stanley Cup playoffs are over. Literally, this is probably the worst time in terms for sports watching that's out there. And all of us are just waiting for football to return. All you naysayers for preseason, how are you feeling right now? Are you coping okay? Because I need some football back in my life, and I hope that you all feel the exact same way. If you have not seen us in a minute, it's been for a very, very good reason. The Wolkenstein family has added yet another Chargers fan over the last couple of weeks. Please join me in congratulating Mr. Dan Wolkenstein of now becoming a father of two. How does that feel?
I was going to say, that's wild. I'm getting goosebumps over here. Goosebumps are covering the bags over my eyes right now from the lack of sleep. But blessed, thankful, grateful for all of it. Honestly, it's a wild ride. I have a son now to go along with a daughter. So big sister is loving life. Mother is doing great. Son is fantastic. And yeah, we're here for the ride and excited for the journey ahead. Sorry, folks. I know it's been a minute. I apologize, but life has gotten in the way a little bit. But honestly, what have we missed? If we're being real. Like, what has happened over the last week in Chargers land? So,
nothing.
I'm also battling the very tail end of a cold, if you can't hear through the mic. So, apologies in advance if you hear any raspiness, if you will. No, I'm not smoking cigarettes. But, Jake, see, my friend, important question to start this thing off. I haven't forgotten about your feelings, and I want to know how they are today. How are you?
I'm just fine, sir.
Good.
I do like the fact that you make it a point to ask me every single time. But now I just always revert back to thinking about the time that you didn't ask me and to think this is the makeup of the makeup of the makeup each time just to make sure. Don't forget again. Yeah, I think you've hit your quota. You're fine. Okay. So we're good.
So now I'm going the other way. So now I'm like putting it in the bank.
Yeah.
Cool.
But it doesn't mean when you forget it the following time that, your equity that you have built up is going to have any currency in
it literally does mean that. That's exactly what it means. So when I forget next time, remember all the times I've asked you. Okay, Jake,
we'll see if your credit is good.
We will see. I think it's 17.9% APR. Interest sucks. This is a big offseason. And specifically as we get into training camp, I think we're kind of getting into some, you can call it make or break, right? You can call it some positions up for grabs, whether it's starting spots, roster spots. But there are some big moments ahead this training camp for some Chargers players. Some maybe more known than others, but none equally or none more so important than the other. These are starting jobs, starting livelihoods, if you will, for all these men trying to get a spot on this team. And Jim Harbaugh, Joe Ortiz have talked about it, like competitors welcome. And finally, we're starting to see the fruits of that, where more and more depth is added, not just to the top, but to the bottom of the roster as well, to make it very, very hard to make this team if you are not one of those elite 9 or 10 dudes, right? So today's episode, I think, wanted to kind of go through as we inch towards training camp. We'll kind of get into a little bit of the training camp battles, but more so some off-season training camp that will determine arguably some players' fates on this team. Some could become starters. Some could become 5th string, 6th string / possibly off the roster, depending on how you look at it. We'll get into all of those. But Jake, I think it's kind of nice to be able to elevate the level of player caliber that we're talking about here, right? Like before, we're talking about guys who were 2nd, 3rd, fourth string guys who could possibly start, possibly get huge playing time. Now we're talking about guys pretty much, a lot further down the roster generally. Like Joe Ortiz has cooked a bit over the last couple years.
Yeah, I'd say he's built the floor, elevated the ceiling. Depth is better.
Just a little bit.
But to Dan's point, that makes this conversation very interesting because, as he was alluding to, we've had this conversation in previous seasons before, whether we're talking strictly roster bubble or, as Dan mentioned, as we're talking strictly jockeying for position for a specific group. This one's a little bit more interesting because, yes, you have some make or break candidates in here. Yes, you have some ones that are going to be jockeying for position. And so it's kind of a hybrid a little bit of guys that could be on their last leg of the roster at the end of this season. Who knows what's going to happen, but by the time training camp comes, you have to have your eyes open for any potential free agents that may get released before week 1, because the Chargers have obviously shown that they are more than willing to bring extra bodies in. So what is that going to mean for some of these guys that we're going to talk about? Dan, let's start it off.
All right. Jake, would you like to go offense or defense first?
You know me, I've always been a defensive guy first. So let's start with the defense.
All right. Let me get things situated on my end. And I think, Jake, probably a good spot to start out this conversation is the trenches, right? And we think about the edge spot, right? Joey Bosa's no longer there. They're bringing Kyle Kennard. I think Khalil Mack, Tuli Tuipulotu, those guys are kind of solidified there. Kyle Kennard, kind of the up and coming. So I think the edge might be a little bit more set in stone a bit, but the interior defensive line, to me, seems so fluid. And there are guys that could be as high as defensive line 3 or 4, as low as practice squad, depending on how you go. Jake, what do you make of the defensive line and the make or breaks that this offseason brings in training camp?
It's interesting because you get rid of Morgan Fox. You don't get rid of him. You let Morgan Fox walk. You let Poona Ford walk. They both sign with other teams in free agency. And it feels like a completely different roster because I think Jesse Minter said it best. Like, you sign 3 guys in free agency to essentially replace 2. So is it going to be the filling of more holes with, filling 2 holes with 3 players? How do you go about accomplishing that? 2 guys in free agents, Deshaun Hand and thank you. They're coming in. You obviously bring Tyler Tart back on a 1-year deal. You have Justin Eboigbe, who's still yet unproven just because of the defense rotation last year. You bring in Jamari Caldwell with your 3rd-round pick in the draft this year.
It's a lot of dudes.
And there's still other guys that we haven't talked about in that circumstance. So because of that, all of a sudden you have a very, good thing from a depth standpoint. But who are going to be the guys that are going to have a leg up in competition early? Who are the other guys that really need to stand out during training camp in order to secure a roster spot moving forward beyond this year? And this is probably, and as you mentioned, this is probably one of the most fluid positions that could have something like that.
Yeah, you think about Scott Matlock, that wants to be a Pro Bowl defensive lineman, right? You think about Jasir Eboigbe, you mentioned him. Otito Ogbonnia is there as well. Ogbonnia, excuse me. They bring in a bunch of interdefensive line. They draft some as well. I mean, there's a bunch of dudes. Chris Hinton's still on this team, by the way. So, we heard a lot about Justin Eboigbe gaining a bunch of weight, impressing the coaching staff with his offseason regimen. We'll see. They bring in 2 free agents in Naquan Jones and Deshaun Hand. What does that mean for Jamari Caldwell? What does that mean for Otito Ogbonnia? There's a lot of names here. And there's going to be names that are not making the 53 that you are going to be surprised. Like Chris Hinton, just put this out. Chris Hinton, Justin Eboigbe, Naquan Jones, Deshaun Hand, Jamari Caldwell, Tito, Eboigbe, Matlock. That's 7. I'm not even counting all of them. They're not keeping 7. Promise you that. So do the math. Defensive line is one position group to look at. And I think what I'm hoping to see is this is kind of like the make or break that I envision, right? Like you look at a guy like Eboigbe, right? Like, is he going to get cut if he's not, a stud this year? No. But like, this is a chance for him to showcase that year 1 to year 2 jump, right? And make or break in terms of playing time. Absolutely. If he kind of goes in the shadows again this offseason, you don't see his name again. I wouldn't be shocked if you don't see him play much at all this year, given who's ahead of him.
There's been a lot of talk during the offseason about Justin Eboigbe specifically. They've talked about his offseason weight training, getting more size. The coaches have been very excited about what they expect from him this year. But at the same time, you still bring in 3 new bodies to this defensive line in a single offseason.
Exactly.
So, yes, like you, I don't expect his roster spot to be in jeopardy because essentially last year, given the heavy rotation of who you had on that defensive line, it was essentially a redshirt year for him, not from an injury standpoint, but just because, being a 4th-round pick in that point in time and the depth of who was in front of him, he just didn't get his opportunity to come out and play. I think he gets it this year. I'll just be interested to see how everything ends up coming to fruition.
Let's stay on the defense, Jake. I think I wanted to talk linebacker, but I think we talked about this pre-show. I think Junior Colson, we talked about his setbacks previously. And while I do think that this is a make or break offseason and training camp for him to get those starting snaps, that starting confidence, that could be your starting middle linebacker week 1 alongside the stud himself. Like, I think he's going to be fine, right? But Dan Henley is going to have running mate. Is it going to be Denzel Perryman? Is it going to be Troy Dye? Is it going to be him? I mean, I don't know. But the corners and safeties, Jake, I think this one's also, aside from defensive line, this one is going to be kind of box office. I'll be having my popcorn ready the whole time for this group because they have so many guys at corner and so many guys at safety to where you almost kind of forget some of these names. And some of them have kind of been castaways already just because either they were injured or didn't play well or unseen or drafted late. But names like Jasir Taylor that have been receiving high praise. Deane Leonard looked very good. Not sure what happened last year. I think he was battling injuries as well. They bring in Trikweze Bridges. RJ Mickens is there. You've got Elijah Molden. You've got Derwin James and Lohi Gilman, like Tony Jefferson. I mean, it goes on and on and on. I didn't even mention Cam Hart, Tarheeb Still. Like, this list doesn't even include the free agents. Benjamin St. Juste, Dante Jackson. There's a bunch of names on here.
Don't forget undrafted free agent Nico Reed.
This is a lot of dudes. This is a lot of names. And generally, they keep 10 corners and safeties, maybe 11. I listed off far more than 10 or 11. But specifically, I think Jasir Taylor, Trikweze Bridges, especially from like a special teams perspective, and Deane Leonard, there's a lot up for grabs for these guys. There's a lot of snaps up for grabs for the start of week 1.
Yeah, if we were projecting forward, I think safety is pretty much locked in for what you know you're going to keep for that group. And that's a great starting 4. Derwin, Elijah Molden, Alohi Gilman, Tony Jefferson. That's a solid 4-man rotation that you have there. Now, could you add to that? It's possible. It's possible.
RJ Mickens would like to.
I'm sure he would. And then you look at guys like Jasir Taylor and Deane Leonard. Dan, it's really such a... When you look at this from a macro sense, look at it from the standpoint of just a short-term time frame. Because Jasir Taylor and Deane Leonard were both in the same draft class. And then a couple years later, you have Cam Hart and Tarheeb Still that come in and I don't want to necessarily say replace, but Tarheeb Still took over that slot position very, very quickly And we were already getting words of that through last year's training camp. And you obviously see what he did in a phenomenal rookie season for him. Cam Hart, while he was even battling injuries, still performed great for being a 5th-round rookie. So with all of those bodies that you have in there, what is this rotation going to be? What I do know as it relates to Jasir Taylor and Deane Leonard, Coach Fitkin loves them on special teams, which that is where they have made their biggest contribution thus far.
100%.
But outside of that, in this rotation, especially as you mentioned, with all the bodies that you have added to it, 2 free agent corners, you mentioned the rookies that they had just added in this class. That's a lot of bodies that are going around there.
Yeah, and grateful because, again, we're talking Jasir Taylor and Deane Leonard, who were starting corners for this team not too long ago. Like 2 years ago, they were starters. And now, like, what are they? I don't know. Again, testament to Joe Ortiz, testament to Jim Harbaugh on the staff of bringing up the depth of this team. So the quarterback room is going to be nuts. And again, roster spots and plays up for grabs, both on defense and special teams. You mentioned Deane Leonard, Trikwith Bridges. Like Trikwith Bridges, that was kind of his calling card. And I think that's what's going to help him ultimately make a spot on this roster. But versatility is key. And you look at, the safety, maybe the 4 is locked, right? But what about that 5th one? If one of these guys can play corner and safety, maybe they come in.
Do you go 5 and 5 at corner and safety? I still think you go 6 corners, 4 safeties, which again makes the conversation is interesting either way, no matter which way you want to slice it.
So Jefferson, Gilman, James, and Molden.
Those are your 4. If I was a betting man right now, I know we haven't even entered training camp yet, but I'd probably say that you don't have any more safeties than that, considering how many corners you have to make decisions on. And because of those you mentioned, versatility is key. Special teams.
Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if you see RJ Mickens start to pop.
Oh, I'm not saying that I wouldn't be surprised. I'm just saying you would probably leave more opportunity for a bigger cornerback room than you would a safety. And by that circumstance, that you would probably go. I agree with you. You keep 10 defensive backs in total. You've got your 4 as far as the safeties goes. How many spots are up for grabs for the corner position? That's 6. So who's going to battle it out?
And that's not even including any free agent possibilities, which we're not even going to tease here because we have no idea, right? And having Jesse Minter and Steve Klingscale, like that's who you want to have kind of deciding this, right? Like those guys have proven that they know what they're doing, so to speak. And it's going to be a fun one. So the middle of July is going to be coming quick. Take a switch over to the offense. And I know Greg Roman's probably sitting there just dreaming happy dreams with the running back group that he has now in comparison to what it was. Although maybe not, considering what he's had previous years, like in Baltimore, where he's had number 1 ranked rushing teams like nobody's business. A little different this year than last year, though. I'll tell you that. And that bodes well for the starters, but not sure how well that bodes for the folks trying to keep a roster spot on the bottom of that roster. And looking at the running back room, this is going to be some tough sledding. And you look at guys like Hassan Haskins, Kimani Vidal, Sanders, who was just brought in. All of these guys are underneath the other 2 that are going to be getting run with Najee Harris and Amari Hampton. I promise you they're not keeping 5. They might keep 4 if they go special teams. So probably, maybe. But who's the odd man out? Hassan Haskins, who has been kind of like their unsung hero kind of thing. They've loved Hassan Haskins and his versatility, what he's brought in, both at the running back position and as special teams. Kimani Vidal, they just drafted him. And this regime just drafted him last year. And Rocket Sanders, they've talked up all kinds of stuff this offseason. And he didn't really need to prove anything when you were going through all the rookie UDFA stuff. So you tell me who's out.
I don't know. I'll single out Rocket Sanders here for a minute. I don't know if I've ever heard, especially just for the Chargers standpoint, any undrafted free agent be talked about in the way that Rocket Sanders has been talked about.
It was like set aside, right?
It was like they said that in so many words, they said that they really didn't need to see much of him during the mini camps and the OTAs because they'd already seen it on film. They already knew what type of a dynamic playmaker he was. So I think based off of that, I'm not too worried about his roster spot in this unit. Obviously, with the departure of J.K. Dobbins, it made things a little bit easier to make this decision.
Can you imagine if he was there? Oh, holy shit!
Then we would just be centralizing around this position. This could be a pod within itself. Yeah, Dan. I mean, you make good points for either Hassan, Haskins, or Kimani Vidal. Yes, Kimani Vidal was just drafted, and hey, his first game that he played in the NFL, great for him. Beautiful pass catching touchdown. But Hassan Haskins, you saw how he really came up valuable for that running back unit late in the season. Jim Harbaugh guy, Michigan alum, valuable on special teams.
That was going to be my next point.
Yes. Who's going to stand out? And we've seen this plenty of times before when we saw it with Simi Fehoko. When he could add that type of value on special teams, that is worth more than I think people realize.
For sure. Same with pass protection. That's the big one. And that was Kimani's downfall.
This will be an interesting group to weed out. So ultimately on the roster, I think you'll ultimately end up with 4 for this position. So who's going to grab it?
Yeah. And this is, again, an ode to versatility, right? Like, it's not just about running the rock with this team and who can do the most pass protection, run blocking, pass out of the backfield, right? Like special teams, the dirty work. It's not just who can tote. This is going to be tough, man. And the thing is, these guys know it. Like, these guys know this is going to be tough. And I don't even want to make a prediction because you can see a lane for all of them, right? Like, to me, if I had to guess, currently, maybe Vidal is the odd man out right now, just based off of proven production and what they've done so far with this team or on film. But I don't know, man. I don't know. Do we want to discuss receivers?
I think you should. I think there's a lot of context around that group, given the additions that were in it, the change from one year to the next. Yeah, there's a lot of influx here. I would say so.
Okay, so to kind of set the table, so to speak, right? We've well documented the Chargers receiving woes outside of Ladd McConkey last year. And you can go past last year if you want to. They bring in Trey Harris. They bring in Mike Williams, Keandre Lambert-Smith. I'm not even talking about the tight ends. But guys like Brenden Rice, Jalen Reagor. There's some UDFAs that were brought in as well. Quentin Johnston's still on the roster. There's a lot of spots up for grabs. And I don't want to say spots, but maybe. But like meaningful play time. And on the screen for those watching, you've got Quentin, Brenden Rice, Jalen Reagor. Quentin's a different story, but make or break in the sense of season, not necessarily training camp, because I don't think it matters what Quentin Johnston does in training camp. To you, to me, to the fans, to anyone. Like, it won't matter. Because everyone will say, I've seen this before. I ain't getting tricked this time. No way. Come back to me in a meaningful game. That's basically what we're going to hear. You can watch Quentin do one-handed toe tap grabs all day long in training camp. Won't matter. Guaranteed. Brenden Rice, Jalen Reagor, though, they're fighting for a spot. And right now, I don't know if either of them have a spot. Like, the receiving core, we'll get on the list. Ladd McConkey 1. Trey Harris 2. Mike Williams 3. Darius Davis 4. So those are the 4 that I think are probably locks. And after that, you've got KLS. That's 5. Reagor, Johnston,
Did you say Darius Davis already?
I did.
Okay.
Brenden Rice. That's like 9. So I think the locks for me, Darius Davis, Mike Williams, Ladd McConkey, Trey Harris, and probably KLS. So that's 5. Not including Quentin.
And that'll be the biggest question. Do the Chargers keep 5 or do they keep 6 wide receivers? Last year they kept 6, but I feel like that was more out of necessity because
there's no way they keep 5. There's no way.
I'm just laying it out there.
Think about what that means.
I get it.
That means
I'm not trying to say that they're.
Hold on. That means Darius Davis, KLS, or Quentin are not on the roster.
Right. So I still throw it out there. You kept 6 last year because of necessity, because you really needed to, because your wide receiver unit last year was pretty bad.
Brutal.
I agree with you, Dan. I think that they keep 6 again this year because all of a sudden you've added 3 wide receivers in a single season, one being Mike Williams re-signing, Trey Harris, KLS you bring in as draft picks. Both offer you that downfield X option that Justin Herbert needs to pair with Ladd McConkey to take some focus off of him. And we've already heard the comments from wide receiver coach Sanjay Lal in terms of what he is expecting from Quentin Johnston going into year 3. So many words, he just says, I have one goal for him, and that is to keep ascending. Without necessarily a specific plan, he said he doesn't know necessarily how that comes to fruition, but he just needs to keep growing. I'm not saying that he won't, but you're not going to see him in some of the plays that you saw him in the Raider game to end the season last year when he had a breakout game. You're not going to see him in those type of roles this year because we've already established that that's just not for him.
And the tough part for this too is like you only have so many opportunities to showcase your skills during training camp, right? Like Justin Herbert doesn't have to show a damn thing. Like he's going to throw, but he could throw 0 times in training camp. He's a starter week 1. A guy like Kimani Vidal or a guy like Brenden Rice, Jalen Reagor, like there's only so many opportunities that they're going to have to make splash plays that will make a lasting impact on this coaching staff to be like, oh yeah, he has to stay. But the receiving core is going to be kind of cutthroat.
Yeah,
because in my opinion, like those 4 are locks. I don't see Darius Davis going anywhere. I don't see Trey Harris going anywhere. Mike Williams or Ladd McConkey. That's 4 already. I'm pretty confident that they're going to keep KLS. That's 5.
I would agree.
So now we're starting with 6 being Quentin. So maybe I would switch Quentin. I don't think they're going to be getting rid of Quentin. He's not going to practice squad. There's just no way. There's no way. But that if they're keeping 5, that's why I'm saying there's just no way they're keeping 5. It has to be 6. And even with 6, it's still KLF, possibly 6, and then Brenden Rice and Jalen Reagor, who Jalen Reagor been high on this offseason, neither one of them would be there. Luke Grimm wouldn't be there. There's a bunch of dudes who like they talked about. All practice squad. Again, sign of things that are great from this staff that have brought in guys to elevate the level, right? We're talking last year, Seifa Hoko versus Brenden Rice as wide receiver 6. And now we're talking Brenden Rice possibly as low as wide receiver 8, 9. Like that's no shade at Brenden Rice. It's just like the waters have been lifted here a bit.
That's how much this team is invested in the wide receiver position in a single season.
Yep. Yeah. I thought about putting like a Trey Pipkins on here, but I think in a perfect world, the most he's going to be able to do is swing tackle in case of injury. We heard Jim Harbaugh talk about that. Zion Johnson's another one, right? I think
that's a fair one.
It's a make or break for sure. It sounds to me like they have the starting 5 in no particular order set, unless someone just blows it out of the water. but there's a lot to lose for Zion Johnson right now because he's trying this flexibility thing, going from guard to center. Will he be guard? Will he be center? Same with Bradley Bozeman. He's done both, but Zion is going into this last year of his contract. Like, this is a big money year for him. There's a lot at stake for him.
Yeah, as we know, the Chargers did not pick up his fifth-year option. And you're essentially going into a situation where you could see Zion Johnson in the final year of his contract at a position that he's never played before throughout his entire NFL or collegiate career. Crazy to say that.
Mm-hmm.
I also think, and we have debated this very healthy on this show, of our doubts of that. But the more and more we see, and the more and more we hear from Jim Harbaugh, they are really going to give Zion Johnson the opportunity to start at center this year.
They don't lie to you. They don't. They tell you how they feel. Like, they
exactly
are telling you.
Is it what I would do? Probably not, especially after they went out and signed Andre James. It's not what I would do. It wouldn't be my first thought. But as we got through kind of the weeds of OTAs and minicamp, I started just understanding, and especially Jim Harbaugh alluding to when he would make the final decision as far as what the starting five rotation was going to be. And he said, between like the first 8 to 10 days when training camp gets underway? I think that leaves only one of two possibilities. It's either Zion Johnson is going to start at center with Bradley Bozeman being your left guard, or it's going to be Zion Johnson back at left guard and Andre James is going to be at center. I think those are the two best options that you have, because you're certainly not going to run it back with the same five, with those two guys back in the same positions that they were last year after you saw the results.
Which one do you think is more on the bubble between those two for a spot? Like, if they were going to be supplanted by someone else, Zion or Bozeman?
I think it's Zion right now.
He's got the most approved.
Well, yes. I mean,
yeah.
For obvious reasons, his contract wasn't. Yeah, his contract wasn't picked up. He's essentially, you could say he's in a 3-person battle between himself, Bradley Bozeman, Andre James, for however that center position shakes out. But he's got the lead of it right now.
Yeah,
he's got the lead of it right now. But they are going to give him every opportunity to play for this team before they have to make that decision. Dan, back to Trey Pipkins, because we have to add him in this conversation. I know he's been in some of these conversations, it's felt like over the last couple of years, but he's also in a contract year. And right now, for a guy who was previously your starter in the best season that he has had as a starter, ended up getting him his contract extension that he received just a couple years ago. And now he's, as you said, essentially your backup swing tackle.
He's making like $10 million to be your swing tackle. That's good. That's good living. So there's a lot of storylines here for this Chargers team and for fans as this training camp battles go underway. But there's a lot of money up for grabs too, and there's a lot of playing time, a lot of snaps, and this is the pressure that I think Jim Harbaugh is wanting. Joe Ortiz are wanting. These players are hoping to thrive on, right? Competitors welcome. There's going to be some damn competition as this training camp starts. And this is going to be kind of cutthroat. I said it before, but there are going to be names that are going to get cut, that it's going to be shocking that they would be cut 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But that's just the state of what this current roster is. So lots of storylines. This will be a fun one. Jake, I'm glad we're back. It feels good.
Feels good to be back.
That's good. I feel like
we need to do a live show again here very soon.
Yes, we got some fun things in store for live show, so stay tuned for that. Jake, anything else you want to tell the great friends before we pop on out of here for the weekend?
We're about 3 weeks out until the start of the training camp on July 17th. It really can't get here soon enough for as much as we are all clamoring for sports to return, namely the NFL and football and Chargers specifically. Oh, Dan, what are we doing here?
Let's go find
it's that time of the year, but we're going to get through it. We're going to try to make these 3.5 weeks fly by.
Yes. With the pool, the beach, with YouTube, with whatever we possibly can, or the movie theaters. Jake, high grades on the newest F1.
Go see it. If you're listening to this, go see it. It was phenomenal.
Oh man. Well, I ain't going to the movie theater anytime soon. I got a little one and a not so little one, but still.
Well, and if you do, you're not seeing F1 either.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Shout out Moana 2. Although we did see Lilo and Stitch with her recently, but enough of that. Jake, pleasure doing this. Glad we're back. Happy weekend, everybody. And we'll talk next time on Chargers Unleashed.